and we have expert people here to answer this question. So, dear panelists, remember, the first question is from the perspective of all of the panelists of UR, where do you all think we are going in future? We can start with Dr. Ram.
That's called passing the buck. I'll take a quick shot at what I think are three very interesting areas to watch. One is what I would call augmented intelligence, sort of a cross between augmented reality and artificial intelligence. So this is not just big number crunching machines, but distributed bits of intelligence which you can customize to what you want. So you can train your house to be the way it wants to be, the way you want it to be, to welcome cousins, guests coming to your house and whatnot. We can talk more about that in the discussion. Second one is mesh networks. This has been around for quite some time now, but innovation doesn't always go in a linear way. Sometimes you see what's called raindrop syndrome. It rains a bit, then it stops, it rains a bit more, it stops, then you get the full storm. So some technologies in this category also are things like NFC, near field communications. 10 years back, people said NFC will disrupt the world. It hasn't, but it will eventually, because the whole ecosystem has to come together. Same with mesh networks. We're now seeing smartphones becoming more and more powerful. Soon your smartphone itself can become a whole mobile operator by itself, and you can eventually start your own mobile networks, that kind of stuff. So we will see this coming back. People have been talking about mesh already for about 5-6 years at least, but it'll come back in a much bigger way once we have more open hardware, open software, etc. around the world. And last but not least, I would pick on open data, which is a big mishmash of big data plus openness plus cooperation between government, industry, and so on. And a lot of people think open data will be as much of a contributor to the information society as the World Wide Web itself. When you have web plus openness plus huge data sets of everything like weather patterns, fertilizer data, crop outputs, monsoon weather patterns, to predict in the next few years which are the places where the best crops can be grown. Is Africa the best place to go basmati rice, things of that sort. So we see some very interesting things happening when open data emerges. I think that's a good start, and let me pass on the camera, the mic here.
Thanks, Madan. Thank you first of all that introduction. I'm sure people will remember me for that. So I'll try to, I think Madan covered most of the stuff. I'll try to give a little bit of a short-term goal perspective in terms of what I personally think is coming down the line, at least 2 years, 3 years down the line. I'll first start with something called as a localized solution. I was just talking to Madan and saying that I was reading a report where TRAI says that India has 860 million mobile subscribers, correct? And out of them, only 120 million are using English as the default language. Rest of all their 600 odd subscribers, 600 million subscribers are using local language, correct? So that's a huge opportunity. And as an Indian, we are poised to become a first, probably the largest developer ecosystem by 2017. We write application which is not targeted for India, correct? So I think, in my opinion, localization and the local language solution, I think that is one big, from a short-term perspective. Second, I think everybody is aware about, there's a lot of buzz around wearable technologies. I think the ecosystem is slowly maturing. If you're doing something on that stuff, it's also interesting. I know a friend of mine called Kranti. He started working on his wearable or so-called startup way back in 2009 or 2008 when he was studying in MIT. And Indian, usually go to US, the weather changes like very different. So to cope up with that weather, he had this overcoat which was made up of transistors and all kind of, and it was smart enough to recognize the outside temperature and heat his body. At the same time, there's a different current. He processes it, so it can cool your body accordingly like that. Right now, the company is Dama Innovation. They sell this nicely looking wearable coats to military defense, and he's making a lot of money. I'm talking about 2008, 2009, when the wearable technology was like, Dama is based out of Mumbai, so you should know about it. The third paradigm where I see a lot of interesting work is happening is more on a big screen, let's say for example, television set. A lot of companies are coming, into that space. Roku being there, Amazon coming with, Kindle Fire HD, and I'm sure there's a lot of more companies to come and bet on the space. So these are the three things I would say apart from what Madan said, and I leave to Shyam for most of.
Uh, so my perspective is more from on the ground, what I've been playing with and what I see is kind of where I should be spending time. And the first thing which I've done over the last 6 months is actually get something called an Arduino or Raspberry Pi. Hardware has become so cheap. I mean, I spent the last 8 years working on software. And really where the shift I am seeing happening is more towards a platform where software and hardware come together. Just a web solution, just a mobile app. Let's take one of the best examples of that, where you have free hardware backed by solid software. Look where we ended up, got acquired for $1 billion by Google. Which kind of leads into the next really big thing where, again, I see a lot of traction. I mean, I'm trying to become part Android myself. I have a smartphone, I have a Google Glass, I have a Jawbone fitness device, all which kind of brings down and comes closer to what we like to call nowadays the Internet of all connected things, right? You walk in, a device knows what you are. You walk in, a video camera recognizes your face. And really, and Google has just launched, I think 2-3 days ago, a Nest developer program, which basically says you have a Nest device, you have a Whirlpool washing machine, you have an AC. It can recognize you're coming home from your phone, start up the AC. You're going to sleep by your device, it can know to dim down the lights, turn up the AC as you want it. So kind of a connected network where all the devices know about you personally, know about your preferences, communicate in a way that really reduces the amount of work you do and recognizes each one of you, each preference. TVs are moving towards that. Android TV, I assume we'll see something about that today. So real personalization as well as connectedness. So that it's not one device in each silo, it's actually all connected devices working together for a much better experience. So other than that, I see a lot of other things, but these are really where I see the focus areas going forward.
Thanks, sir. So I would also like to note that we want this discussion to be very interactive with you guys. So after every question, we'll ask you if you have any questions. We also have some flags, and we'll be giving away those flags to people who are more interactive. So some things for you. So yeah. So we move on to the next question. So
I have a question for Dr.
yeah, please.
So I was just reading today, there's an app, I don't remember the name right now, but it enables two Android devices or two iOS devices and now kind of bridge between iOS and Android even without a network using peer-to-peer or mesh kind of technology. So I was just curious to know, have you, and we know that MIT RoofNet eventually got acquired by Cisco and became Meraki and then got acquired by Cisco. So what are your thoughts on mesh networking, especially in the Indian space, and like especially if, for villages and stuff like that where the pipe is not there or it's not economical for Airtel and all the operators to, build towers. That's one question. And second, I wanted to ask all the panelists about autonomous vehicles, and there's another company called Cruise, Y Combinator backed, which is saying that for $10,000 your regular car can become like a Google self-driving car. So thoughts on that, and I think we all know it probably will take a long time to happen in the Indian market, but maybe some thoughts on that as well.
Both great questions. I'll take the first one, which is Internet of Things and India. Hardware, as you all know, is India's big Achilles heel. I'm a member of the Internet of Things SIG of TIE, the Indus entrepreneurs, and now they're realizing that we have to move very fast on this IoT thing, others completely miss the boat. Countries to watch, countries like China and South Korea. So I would say a very interesting company to watch is South Korea. A company to watch is Samsung, because they are the granddaddy when it comes to things in people's homes. If you're talking about India, most Indian homes have a Samsung fridge, Samsung oven, Samsung dishwasher, Samsung phone, etc. So if at all there's a company which can link them all together, it is Samsung itself. So I would say that's a very interesting company to watch, but they bring it very stealthy, I think. They're sort of doing a skunkworks kind of an approach to the whole thing. And for the other question, I'll leave it to these guys.
So, personally, I think it's a great technology. Both Google autonomous car versus what Cruise, that Y Combinator backed. But when you think about, don't think about a technology, think about a problem and what solution you want to do. Having a driverless car. So I think I would try to answer in a different way. If the technology in all right condition, in all best cases, I think it's great stuff. But when you are implementing, because I am very proud about India, and I'll always try to think if I'm doing something, we are like 1.2 billion. A lot of consumers are here. So how do you try to think that this is the problem and I'm going to solve for this number of people, and then you approach it? I think that makes sense. But
Could we possibly, so many rail accidents, could we possibly adapt to driverless trains? Are they safer than?
correct, yeah.
I mean, he's mostly answered most of what I wanted to say, but really, I mean, I had a chance to look at the Google car swing by last time I was there at Google. So it's a lovely concept and makes perfect sense in the US conditions. India, if I tried to use an autonomous car to get here, I would probably still be standing at the very same place I was. Like the inch by inch movement concept would probably have to be hard coded in.
The challenge is that one day there is a one-way traffic, the second day there is a two-way traffic. Correct? And how do you, and there's a lot of things that we do what we call as a, in India, jugaad. Like there's a fantastic book, by the way. So I would say if you're targeting a solution for India, it has to be an Indian solution. Flipkart is a great example, by the way.
Right, so we'll move to the next question. So if you see the current scenario, what are the opportunities for startups and developers alike? What do you guys?
Well, let's find out who's in the audience. How many of you are with startups? Just raise your hands. Oh wow, very. How many of you are with big companies? You have a nice, secure, cushy 9-to-5 job. Okay, good. How many of you are from any students out here? Academic students? Oh wow, excellent, fantastic. What did I leave out now, other than these categories? Big company, startup students. Okay, I'll say this. You have a great chance wherever you are. I work with your story, which is focused 100% on startups. And this is a great day and age to be a startup. It's also very competitive. So we have no illusions that we become a billionaire overnight and all that stuff. It's very tough, very competitive. But if you have a dream, go for it. At the same time, if you're working for a big company, it's also great. I also work with big companies on knowledge management, innovation management, all that stuff. And the good thing in a big company is if they get it right, you can do scale. You can do massive, globally changing projects. Not just tinker around with a small project in your domain, but you can do globe changing products if you are in a big global company. So pick where you want to do work. Figure out what kind of a person you are. Do you want to be someone who likes risk and do things on your own and be your own boss? Or do you not mind trading in a bit of your autonomy for being able to work on a big project of scale? So it takes both types, and you can even morph from one to the other and back. It's common for people to start off in a startup, then get acquired by a big company, join a big company, leave again and join a startup, and then go back to a big company. So there's no hard and fast rule about where you should be for your life. Things come and go. It all depends on how you unleash your own creativity and match your creativity with what the market can offer you.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me, all of you are developer, correct? So any idea where does India stand compared to other developer population in the world? Which is the largest developer population in the world? China? No, it's US. Second is China, third is India. And by 2017 or 2018, based on whatever market research report you take it, we're going to become the #1 developer population. But in that #1 population, what is our share? What is our impact that we're going to drive to the global technology ecosystem? I think that's the question I would like to answer, rather than worrying about what is there for Indian developer ecosystem. So I think all of you are young, all of you are very passionate. I was listening to a talk by Rajan Anandan, and he was saying that you guys, what do you want to do? Do you want to sail, or do you want to build a warship? Correct. Make your call. If you want to sail, you'll join big companies like where I work for. Correct. And if you want to build a warships, correct, you work in a very agile environment. Correct. Not that big companies are not agile, they do, but the chances of the innovation rate is happening is a different scale altogether. So if you're a developer, if you're a startup, I think you have a very big opportunity in front of you. think of, look at a case like Alibaba.com, correct? In China, grown up, now they are hitting the IPO and US and huge valuation. I think how many of those stories we have in India? Correct? You can count on your fingers. But how can you? It is up to you to change or transform that ecosystem in India. Rather than thinking about, oh, I'll build something which is going to consumed in US, my target audience is there, that's where the people are paying money, and rather than think about the opportunity here. Though you are building those solutions, but most of the Indian developers today live, below the app poverty line. That's what they say, which is a per app per month $500. Correct. Instead of that, why not we make something that is locally consumed here? Think about business model which is radically different. I was at conference, and there somebody is coming with a business pitch idea. Now imagine what are the innovation could happen in mineral water business. Can you believe it? A mineral water business. You have a Kinley, you have a Aquafina, you have a different kind of it. Now there was a guy who was saying that I'll give you a water at a free of cost. What I'll just use a branding on a bottle will be mine. You can come and get a water bottle at free of cost, a mineral water. But the cost of branding, correct, and that's how he was making money out of it. Very specific Indian idea, correct? Try to do something same in US. They'll say, okay, the water is free, maybe something different. The water is not pure. Do it in India? No, I think people are gonna jump on the store and correct. So think different, I would say. And I think the opportunity is huge. I'm personally a great advocate or great believer that India is the future. Correct. I mean, people wanna go to US. I had an opportunity to go to US, but I said no. India. I wanna stay in India.
How do you follow up something like those two? I mean, I'm probably not even going to try. So rather, opportunity, huge, definitely, without a doubt. But as he said, look at the Jugadu opportunities in India. Don't go around building just another website, try to replicate what's there in the US. A great example of this is how, I think now Bill Cascade is finally trying this, or a local Banya. If you think about grocery, online grocery, the initial thought would be try an Amazon model, have a warehouse, deliver from there, so on and so forth. You would think that in India, the cost first, cash on delivery has completely removed any margins you might have. You have to take back groceries, the cost becomes too high. And so, I mean, I had played around with this idea quite some time ago, like 2-3 years ago. I gave up on this, but what ended up happening is people started saying, let's pick the local Kirana wala, go to that guy, get the groceries from there and deliver it, or rather get him to deliver it instead. So you save the cost, you save the delivery cost, you save the warehousing cost, all you're doing is the commission.
There is, I think, an app called GIF store.
So lots of people are now getting onto that idea. So similarly, there are multiple opportunities. And in India, hardware, as I mentioned, like previously we've all mentioned, is huge. It's going to be huge. There's no way the amount of things people buy on a day-to-day basis. Hardware has become like grocery. You go there, you come back with a smartphone, you come back with a washing machine, whatever. Education, healthcare. There are so many opportunities, and again, think with an Indian perspective to see what you can do differently rather than just copying the US model, a Europe. And I think the opportunities just open up.
Great. So, do we have some questions?
I have a question. So I have a question to Dushyant. You talked about India being the third largest in the number of developers. We're talking about quantity, but what do you have to comment on the quality? Because you see that a lot of places India is doing good. I mean, you can count a lot of good Indian startups, but when you compare the number of developers to the number of good apps or the number of good ideas out there, what do you have to say about that?
So I would say yes. I think we are not yet there, but that is not. I would rather look at this as an opportunity. Correct. To answer your question, yes, I think we have a long way to go in terms of our thought process is very different when you certainly look at the problem versus people who are in the different part of the world. So I would say yes, we are not there, But I think we slowly started doing that. If you look at success stories, what you see like Little Eye Labs, they are India. Like I mean, I'll not go into detail, but I'm a great believer of the kind of work they are doing. SourceBit, for example, correct? I mean, they are also an application company. Do some fantastic work around that. But I agree, there are very few, handful of people who are doing that. I think the part of thing relies on guys like us, which is Intel, Google, Microsoft, and you name some of the people, where we have to invest a lot into the ecosystem, get that education, get that readiness to developers, and try to give them a intelligence that okay, if you want to be a successful app developer, if you want to be successful in this particular field, what are some of the things, and how do you basically internalize it and use it in your development.
Might offer a slight different perspective on that. It's not just, it's also a cultural thing. I mean, at home you're kind of told join the next big company and so on and so forth. You'll find a Google or a Microsoft both in India and abroad filled with great Indian developers. I mean, there are tons of them. Will they be starting up? Not so much. Will they be part of the next big startup? Definitely, you can bet on. So it's that mentality as well, that you'd rather join the herd rather than be at the front of the herd, which kind of gives us that impression. So it's not completely true that we don't do good stuff.
Yeah, so for example, if you look at Amit,
Yeah, Amit.
as an Indian,
Yep.
Satya, correct? So so when I say it's not more from an individual perspective, it's more in terms of how do you, the context and the environment, that makes it different.
We'll take two quick questions.
My question is, with Google announcing startup launch for Indians, especially Indians, how do you think would be the scenario with startups in India, like a startup launch by Google for Indians, only Indians, after UK?
I think Google would be a better person to answer it. Somebody from Google would be a better person to answer that. But yeah, if anything comes across in our country which enables startup to do more, we'll obviously be benefiting from that. So, but yeah, we'll let Google answer it. Maybe we find out something today. So one last question on this, Ron?
Yeah, hi, I'm Hemant, and Alexis Carlos in the book The Man the Unknown says that the more intelligent we are getting, we are losing our intuition. With the space we are going, we have a device to, probably in the next coming years, we might have a device to say whether this food is good for you or not. Okay, don't eat this, you're high on cholesterol. Or it might say, okay, this is time to sleep, this is time to pee. Right, so where's the human factor? Like in this space, like you have a lot of data out there, like the social media impact of people having panic attacks. There is an article written saying we are not alone. All the people who program have a lot of data going there in their head, even when they're sleeping. It's like an asynchronous process running in their brain, and even though they sleep for 8 hours, they didn't feel like they slept for 8 hours. There's a lot of problem. There's a lot of data. There's data everywhere. And where's the human touch? Most of us have so many friends online, and we still don't know who is next in the next door. On the same case here, we were sitting, and how many of us did we speak to the guy next to us? We were just sitting with our friends, and then it's a small circle there. So where's the human touch, and where do you think the human touch would come in?
I'll let Madan answer this question, but I'll just, before I hand over the mic, so I want to say that these are the devices that then I take a decision. Correct? No matter what they say, it's companion device, and in a way, the way I look at it is that they are kind of in helping hands of this work that it is repetitive, where I can push it off and I can focus on something that I want to do it. But this is more of a behavior question.
How many of them have avoided having smartphones or going away from? That's kind of getting outdated, right?
I can't answer the question,
Yes.
but I think it's a better question to answer after having a few drinks or smoking different kinds of drinks, depending on your choice of poison. But I'll say this, actually there's another view which says exactly the opposite, which is the more augmented intelligence you have, the more you can leave all the mundane things in life to them, routine things in life, and focus on what really matters to you. So actually you will see more of arts, crafts of a different kind floating. You will see much more of different kinds of intuitive behaviors coming in. If you even look at our education system, when I was in school, we had log tables. I'm sure none of you know what log tables are, but some of you thanks. Yeah. So, and at that time, people said, "Oh my God, this is making people forget the beauty of multiplication." Then came the Casio calculators, and people said, "Oh my God, you don't need to memorize multiplication tables anymore. Now it is, I don't need encyclopedias. I can go and ask Google for everything." So teachers are angry at Google because it's making students to copy paste this and that. But actually, this is how technology marches. It makes you forget the need to forget all kinds of mundane things and focus on the real essence of the problem. So I think actually it is very good for intuitive behaviors, etc. You can leave certain kinds of things aside to the great mind machine matrix or whatever you want to call it. So I think it's fine actually.
Thanks a lot. So we'll quickly move on to the third and last question. And then
I have a question over here.
We'll take it in the end. This guy will be around because
It's an open question I wanted to ask.
Sorry.
It's an open question I wanted to ask.
Okay. So, but the thing is, if you don't have time, the keynote will start and they'll have to end it abruptly.
I think it won't take more than a minute. Okay, so I started this company like 8 weeks ago. So it was like, we started with 1 employee and today with 9 employees within 8 weeks. And the company growth is like every week they're doubling and doubling. And you're going to the third office. How do we retain that culture forever? Because the company is going at very high exponential ratio.
Keep doing the same stuff. Exactly.
But a lot of things are coming in and out. So how do we go ahead?
So at least I'm a co-founder of a company, I kind of understand your question. So as they say, it's more important to say no to the things that you don't want than to keep saying yes to things that you want. So be very clear about what you don't want to happen in your company or in your culture and keep rejecting it very humbly. That's one key that I have learned so far is very, very important. Whether it's projects, whether it's employees, whether it's new offices or new opportunities, you have to be very careful about what you want, what you don't want. If you don't want, just say no to it. Be humble in that, that's all.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe we can talk about that later. We move on to that question. So, given the outlook of what's been happening, what do you guys think? Does B2B space look more promising or the B2C one?
Since I have the mic this time, I get to start. The simplest answer is it depends. I mean, what are we talking about? What the trend that I've been seeing happening is that B2C companies are getting the valuation. And that's simply because the valuations are based on growth and saying these many numbers will eventually account to these many money and so on and so forth. B2B companies are more grounded in terms of reality and saying they're actually catering to a specific audience, specific money. It's actually selling a service and getting paid for it. So in the Indian terms, if you want to start a proper dhanda, B2B is where it is. B2C is where, unless you're catching lightning in a bottle. Like the Yo app that I don't know how many people have seen in the last few days, which I still don't get, but maybe because that's aging me.
All of us don't get it.
Yes. Right. These are the B2C companies that really catch attention. There are some really good B2C companies out there. Nest. You can sell them, but it's just rare to find them because the current culture seems to be dictated towards numbers, valuations, growth, depending on ad revenue. WhatsApp, I still don't know what their business model was. They never used to charge me for the subscription, so they still don't, right? So that's kind of where my answer is.
No, I think Shyam, most of the stuff. So the fundamental question you need to ask yourself is what is your objective? Like, what business do you want to play in? Like, if your objective is to okay, I'm more in a growth kind of a area where I want to play, I think that B2C makes sense. And if you're into say, okay, I want to cater to a niche market, I want to make money, when I say make, obviously B2C also make money, but in terms of, what is your focus? And if you have that question answered, then I think there's an equal playing ground for both B2B and B2C.
Yeah, I think there's always a pendulum swing. There was a time when B2B set the tone for competition technologies, all this stuff. Now it's on the other way. Now it's B2C that's defining social media. So Yammer is like a copy of Twitter in that sense, etc. After some time, we'll see it going the other way. Companies will figure out how to replicate this whole social media kind of a model, for example, within the enterprise, and then you see new kinds of variants of all this coming out which go back into B2C space. So it's like a spiral. So sort of a combination of a pendulum and spiral, and I would say B2E is a good one to watch. Business to employee. What does a company do for its employees? There's a lot of buzz now around co-creation models outsourcing, crowdsourcing. So these are areas where the boundary of the firm is being negotiated. So we see very fuzzy kind of B2B2C kind of models also coming into play here.
Thank you. So anybody has a question on these things? Two good questions. Yeah.
I have questions. So you talked about like we should B2B and B2C only we have to focus. It depends upon your focus.
Depends on your play, where you want to play around.
No, it also depends upon your surroundings. Is it?
When you say surrounding,
Mother, like if I'm in Bangalore, then B2B and B2C, like it will be different.
I can tell you to IoT space, doing fantastic work. Correct. 10 people company. On the other side, there is a B2C company. Correct. May not have achieved the kind of revenue or the profit what they have achieved. So I believe it's problem area. It's your skill set. Lot of things depends on that.
So more than B2B or B2C, the aim as a startup should be to solve a problem. You solve a problem, the money will eventually find you, whether it's B2B, B2C. And like, there should be a reason for someone to give you money, whether it's advertisers, B2C, or consumers, or businesses. Solve a problem. Everything else goes.
Like you both are saying, like environment doesn't matter at all. It matters, or focus only matters. Is it the conclusion?
It depends on where you are in your career path also. Typically, B2B startups come out from people who are in their 30s and 40s, who work in a company for a while, they know company jargon, they know the problems of the CIO, the CTO, and they can design a very good product for that space. People fresh out of college understand B2C space much better. So you will tend to find that your context as an employee will give you that frame, how to frame the problem. Like they said, what's the problem to solve? If you're coming fresh out of college, you may not understand the needs of a Fortune 500 company in terms of file sharing issues and all that stuff. But you may understand B2C, C2C kind of file sharing models, like for example. But if you work in a big company for a while, you know what is the day-to-day problems of a CFO or CIO. Then you can come up with product solutions for corporate design of the portal internally, etc., etc. So it depends where you are in your life cycle also. So if you've been in a company for a while, you will have good insights in what to do in terms of a B2B product, etc.
One more question.
I have a more basic question. You spoke about startups and you said there's a lot of competition on startups and other things. Me and my friend eventually started a small firm sort of a thing about 6 months ago. A challenge for most of the startups, the emerging startups, would be to find fundings, right? The venture capitalists and other things. So you said competition. So what would you advise, like you experienced guys, what would you guys advise for us, like, to us, all the entrepreneurs, the emerging entrepreneurs, how do we find funds? Because we can't spend our own cash, like, we can, but just to a certain extent. How do we, get more funds into it?
They give you the first part of the clue, which is find a problem to solve. The second problem is find a customer who is willing to pay for that solution. Then investors will come.
I would say, if you're not willing to take a risk on yourself, then why would investor will take a risk on you? Correct? So I think startup ecosystem in India has matured a lot. There are a lot more investors. In fact, I have seen a lot of investors in early stage and seed stage. Then if you go to Series A, Series B, and Series C, let's say a PE stage. So the funding is available. It's just that how do you articulate your problem? How do you show that okay, what stuff you're doing is indeed there is a market requirement, there's value proposition for people. And if you focus on that, I think funding is, in my view, I may be wrong, but in my view, it's widely available.
Coming from a startup perspective, I mean, the things I've heard usually are, where's the team? What problem are you solving? Where's the customer? What's your track record? Why should you be the one to do it? If you can answer these questions, funding is available. It's not that good. But if India, I mean, Silicon Valley, I've seen a few cases where with an idea you can get some funding. India, not so much. You have to show commitment, you have to have a team that can deliver on it, and you have to show some amount of traction. Then funding is not that hard, basically.
Thank you.
Next, so I'm really sorry, the IO came to start in the next 2 minutes, so we'll cut it here. Most probably all of the gentlemen will be staying here for at least some more time. You can catch them up offline and ask for questions. So really, thanks a lot for coming and giving us your time. Thanks Dr. Rao, thanks Shyam for coming down from Mumbai. Big round of applause.